you're a good friend of mine. If somebody told me Mike murdered somebody, I'd be like, well, Mike probably had a good reason. Or what? I just killed somebody for no reason.
Mike. Going straight to the top. Just put the sec on the clock. I am Rihanna's a shot. I'm going straight to the top.
Yo, what's going on here? Mike Pillman here with another episode of the Sports and Real Podcast. Once again, I appreciate you guys joining me. As always, YouTube, Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, whatever you get your podcast from, listening and watching. I appreciate you guys once again. So when I started, I mentioned this before, when I started the podcast, I wanted it to be more than just about sports. We're going to talk about sports, we're going to have a good time, but I wanted to cover important topics. And in recent years, one of the more important topics that, I've come across, and it's become mainstream now, but I've adopted it myself, has to do with mental health. Growing up, if I'm being honest, if we're being honest, mental health wasn't really on our minds like that, right? It was, toughen up. Anything that happened, big boys don't cry, that type of deal. But as I've gotten older and I've, paid attention more, I now recognize the importance of mental health. And someone who's helped me along in that journey is one of my good friends from way back, 20-something years now, my guy, Matt Jean, who actually, if you guys pay attention to the videos, to the recordings, is actually not only a mental health therapist, and we'll get you to say your title, but he is also a rapper.
Yes, sir.
So the soundtrack to the podcast is actually his voice.
I'm going straight to the top.
One of his songs. So multi-talented dude, one of my good friends. I can count on him. But especially in the space of mental health, he knows a hell of a lot. And as I've grown in my understanding and appreciating this space, he's helped me along in that journey. So I want to welcome in very special guests again, Matt Jean, Matt Genius.
Yes,
what
sir.
other AKAs you go by?
That's it, man. Matt and Matt Genius.
My guy.
That's it. Appreciate you for having me, man. It feels good to be here. I've been following the show. You've been doing some amazing things. I love your takes. I think they are important to have a voice of the people, that's not biased. You don't got nobody in your wallet yet? Nobody paying?
Hopefully soon enough.
Watch your content change. I'm messing with that. Nah, but it's good to be here, man. I appreciate you opening up this forum so we can talk about mental health.
Yeah, at the right price. Anybody can be sold at the right price.
I got my price, man.
I ain't gonna front.
Hey, we should. That's real, man.
Man. No, so appreciate you being here, man. And I think this is a very important topic. So, you guys, please don't take this lightly. And my hope is that you'll be back here, regular guests, once a month,
for sure,
every 6 weeks, whatever it is, right? Because two things: your physical health, which if you guys pay attention to my episode with Joanne, my wife, on here, we talked about nutrition and physical health, super important. Mental health as well, super important. Like if you got those two things, then what else do you need, right? Your mental's right, your physical's right, and you're ready to go. And as adult males, right? We're no longer teenagers, adult males. Some things are more important than sports, and that's what we're going to get into. So, before we jump into it, Matt, into the serious stuff, you kind of broke away from being an avid sports watcher.
Yes.
And which was surprising because I remember, 20 whatever years ago it's been, right? Like all we talked about was sports and, mossing people and who got mossed, right, and like all this stuff. And all of a sudden, you broke away from sports a few years back of watching sports. I mean, I'm sure you still pay attention, but you don't watch it as religiously as you used to.
Right.
And I want to get your take as to why that is and how that has helped you, because in thinking about that and how we're going to talk on this podcast, there's probably some dudes, right, who have this relationship with sports that may be unhealthy, and they don't know how to break away.
Right.
So I wanted to get your take, talk about why you did it, how you feel, do you miss it, any advice you can give to those who are really struggling with their relationship with sports, because sports can hinder you from living real life because you're watching games all day, the whole week, like you're stuck and you're drinking alcohol, right? It impacts your whole life.
You're down bad, basically.
Basically, right? Your team loses, you're gone for the week, right? Until the next Sunday.
Yeah.
Like, take us through that process. What led you to breaking away? How you ended up breaking away? Where you are now in your relationship with sports and all that?
Yeah. I'm a sports fan, I'm a sports fan, meaning I love the idea of being active and getting out there and doing something with your physical body, Like I saw your rackets for racquetball, and I'm like, yo, we should get out to play some racquetball. But as far as being a fan, I think I was suffering, man. I was a Buffalo Bills fan. That's not the only reason, but let's start there, man. I was a Buffalo Bills fan.
Come on, man.
Seriously, like when I became at least a football fan, I was a Buffalo Bills fan in the late 80s and 90s, where they were at the pinnacle of the sports world because they went to Super Bowl, I think, 4 times.
4 straight times.
And they lost.
Yes.
4 straight times.
That's right.
And I remember what it did to my little poor psyche, even back then. And so I think at that time, what I did was like, I don't want to be a fan of any team because of the weight it had on my young mind, even back then. But as I got older, I realized that it was a currency, man. These were moments of intimacy in my life that I was sharing with complete strangers that I could have been sharing with people who I actually care about.
What?
Yes. Meaning the highs and lows that people experience in fandom, it's intimate, right? It's intimate. Meaning I'm watching this game and somebody scores, a 60 pass, 60-yard touchdown. Right? Or somebody makes a shot at the buzzer. Automatically, what the people in the arena are experiencing, I'm experiencing too, vicariously. We're all erupted.
Yeah.
With a huge surge of dopamine, serotonin in our system. Basically, we're sharing something. We're sharing the energy of a specific moment, right? That allows us to feel closer just for that moment. When that moment's over, there is no intimate relationship between us, right?
Right, you just break away.
You just break away, right? And so for those moments of intimacy, those high levels of intimacy, I'm like, man, this is a currency that I could be using towards myself, bettering my own self, improving my own relationship with my family, as a father, as a friend. And so when I took away Monday Night Football, all day Sunday, Saturday night, all Saturdays sometimes when you talk about college football.
Yeah.
Thursday night, that equated to almost like 20 hours a week.
And then when basketball season comes around,
so now, so
you're like 7 days a week in sports.
Okay, so
and your emotions, listen,
all over the place.
We've talked about this before, and I don't think you ever brought up that emotional connection to the athletes like that. And
it's not just the athletes; it's the people sitting right next to you.
Oh shit!
Right? When you're in the,
so now you make me feel some type of way.
Think about this, man. If you had a game, right, and your team scores, and a couple people around you, you don't even know them. You're hugging them, high-fiving them. Oh, you're embracing them. That's intimacy, bro. We're letting people in, and which isn't a bad thing. But I think what happens is that when that level of intimacy dies down, then where are we? How do we sustain that when we're not on that high? Or what if we're in a slump to where collectively we're feeling down because of our team's vicarious downfall?
So you don't think it's we can separate it? Like, you don't think we're just separate human beings experiencing the same thing, and we just happen to have the same emotion at the same time? So,
yes. So
we're not connected like that. You're making it sound, unless I'm wrong in understanding.
Yeah.
You're making it sound like we're connected in our emotions as a result of being part of this game.
We are. We are. You said something that I don't even think you realized you said when you were introducing this topic. You said religiously. You said we watch these things religiously, and it becomes
that was just a word, man.
It's just a word, but the word has meaning. It has substance. Religiously meaning that we're adorning. We're giving our praise. We're giving our essence, basically, to an understanding of, are you not entertained, basically, And so when it keeps us up, when it's good for us, it's a medicine for us. We forget about that 60-hour work week we just did.
You're right.
The double shift at the job, the husband or the wife complaining, right? The kids. We forget about all those things. And
But isn't that a good thing though, right? That we have something to break away. Like everybody has a hobby. It may not be sports. It could be movies. Everybody has something that takes them away from reality.
Right.
It could be drugs.
Could be.
Right?
Right.
So sports is like a drug, except that it's not illegal and it doesn't hurt your body. But I guess you could, in your world, you could say it hurts your mind, your spirit, right?
Yeah, it hurts your body.
Tied up.
It hurts your body too. For the most part, us fans, for those 20 hours of the week or whatever, how many hours, what are we doing? Sitting down.
Damn.
Right, we're eating.
This brother's trying to get me not to watch sports anymore.
I'm not.
Oh man.
I'm trying
to get my followers up. This brother really trying to tell me.
can, but I'm just saying you have to balance it with all things moderation. So I remember how I tapered down was I stopped watching the full games and I just watched the highlights at the end of the day, right? I watched the highlights on ESPN.
Okay.
Then I stopped watching the highlights and I was getting them on Snapchat. Snapchat had a really good, I can't remember his name, Gary Streisky. Remember Gary Streisky?
No.
Asian kid. Okay, well, he was on Snapchat. He was just bringing it. 2 minutes, I'm out. I'm done, right? I watched the entire 2 minutes every day.
2 minutes.
2 minutes, 2-3 minutes tops. I'm done. And then I'm like, I don't even want this because what is happening is that there's an exchange of emotions that are being coached in me by somebody else that doesn't allow me to understand what's really happening in me. It makes me not pay attention to my own internal mental processes, internal emotional processes, and me, and then I have something else to focus on, which then delays me managing my own.
Oh my goodness, man.
I'm just saying, and that's just for me. Now, you did say something that's important as well. You said, every man or every person needs a method of coping. And sports could be a healthy coping
It's
method.
an outlet.
It is. It could be healthy, but there's no but. It could be healthy. To thine own self be true, though. You have to be honest with yourself. For me, I have way more, and it's not to knock anybody who I have way more important things to occupy my mind. Like I want my mind to be filled with my ideas. So it's not just the sports you're listening to or you're watching, right? You're listening to those announcers and those commentators and their takes, right? So I'm being programmed by what they think and feel in real time, right? And I'm not even paying attention to how biased they may be and how their understanding of what they're watching, because we're watching them watch the game, basically.
Right, but true.
You don't watch the game on mute, do you?
Well, some people do.
Unless you're at the game.
Park. Yeah, but check this out. Sports is not the only mechanism where that happens. That happens. You listen to my podcast
Program.
Please keep listening to my podcast.
Yes, your podcast.
So you listen to podcasts. You watch and listen to different things, movies, right? Look, you can't tune out the whole world. So at some point, you're gonna get intel from somebody, right? Whether it's somebody on ABC and ESPN calling the NBA Finals or wherever, somebody is telling you something, and you're choosing whether or not to believe it.
Let me intervene for a second, right? In a healthy mind, you can now be able to compartmentalize those things through a filter that you've now put in place to see what is going to go deeper into your long term versus what's trash, what's just entertainment. We listen. You heard this phrase before. This is life, man. Yo, my team. This is life, man. It's all I bleed blue and green. That's too much emotions that I'm giving away for nothing in return. Seriously, like the return isn't paying me as much as I'm giving to them. In fact, I'm paying them to drain me, brother. I'm paying them.
But listen. Emotions are part of life, man.
Correct. I'm not saying
so the highs, the lows in sports. People try to replicate that with TV, watching reality TV and movies. They try to replicate, and I don't think anything replicates what sports does because it's happening. It's real life. Right? Reality TV is scripted. Sports is not scripted, although some people will tell you it is.
Right.
But sports, so it allows you to experience, cry, laugh, all those emotions at the same time. So to me, maybe it's not that bad if you're able to compartmentalize it correctly. Is that what you're saying? Because some people can't. And I used to not be able to. A few years ago, when the Dolphins took an L, I was like out the whole week.
I'm
not even gonna lie.
Feel it.
Yeah.
You feel that difference.
Like I was stressless at work. I couldn't think right. Like it drained me. Now I'm able to cope better. You know, the Dolphins lose. Okay, you know, now I'm able to see like it's just a game now. So, you know, I get that. I get what you're saying.
Okay. Yeah. So you got to ask yourself, how many of us have that capacity based on honestly working towards building that state of mind, that way of thinking?
Okay.
You know, I can't say I've done any real assessment to figure out how many of us are actually taking this matter of this type of programming. It's just one. Programming comes in many forms: media, education, and religion. And so, because sports is religion for a lot of people, that's why they are on Sundays. On Sundays and Saturdays, that's their religion, sports.
Yeah.
Right? They pay a hefty amount to get the premium seats, to get the right channel, you know, to get the jerseys. Same thing, you go to church, right?
You're right, bro.
You know, and then here's what really blew me away when you understand the church analogy. In church, you go through a specific high and low as well, right? For example, you know, we grew up in the Seventh-day Adventist church. There is this understanding before the person who comes to deliver the specific message goes up. There's this portion that's called praise and worship. And praise and worship, without us actually taking time to understand what it is, it's taking you through a psychological roller coaster. Meaning, you start off praising, right? Praising is the upbeat. What happens to your heart rate right there? It goes up, right? So once it starts to go up, right, then worship comes in, they slow it down, right? Why? Because they want collectively all of us to be on the same page. So they're programming us to be more susceptible to receive a message.
Jesus.
Most shows that we watch grew up in the 90s, Family Matters.
Yeah, it has that crescendo.
It has it called a bell curve or the parabola, right? It starts off with the show like small banter, somebody trips and falls into the everybody laughs, and then a crisis happens, and then they go to commercial and they sell you stuff. And then they resolve their issue at the end of it in a nice warm package, and then it's over, right? That's programming. That's what programming does. Programming gets you to pay attention to what they want you to pay attention to, and believe that this is how we resolve certain situations based on how they resolve it. That's scripted. All that stuff is scripted.
Y'all are never gonna watch sports.
No, man. Watch your sports, man. Some people can manage it. Some people have a healthy, balance between sports and real life. Okay.
Let's pause that one right there because I want to get to the serious stuff. But this is a great combo. We might pick it up back in when we come back.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous, man. Okay. All right. Let's move on. There, y'all. I don't want you guys to leave me, so I had to cut off Matt real quick. No, but seriously, it's an important topic. We'll come back to it, but I do want to touch on some other things. So, as I said, mental health has gone mainstream. People who don't even, really practice anything in mental health, they're giving advice on mental health. And I'm not saying, no, you can't give mental health advice just because you're not an expert or whatever, you didn't go to school for it. But it's so mainstream now that I'm gonna be honest, sometimes it feels like it's gone to an extreme. So we both grew up in environments that weren't the greatest, right? Sons of immigrants, right? We grew up, especially you, I would say, you grew up in the jungle of Miami, Florida. Opalaka.
Yeah.
The parts of Miami that aren't on TV when ABC is saying, welcome to Miami.
Right.
So you grew up in the jungle, and now you're this guy telling me mental health this, mental health that.
Right.
But good and damn well, how we grew up,
yeah.
I was going to say a word, but this was soft.
It's your show, man. You can't cuss on your show.
I was going to say some other word, but you know what I'm saying? So what is the difference between mental health and caring about your mental health and what we would consider when we were younger as this nigga soft?
Right. So honestly, I feel like what I needed back then was the person that I am right now. Like I use that as one of the hooks for the male clients that I work with. I say that I'm the therapist I needed 15 to 20 years ago. Like if I had me in my life, trajectory would have been completely different.
Wow.
I would have avoided a lot of some pitfalls based on what we would have considered soft, right? Versus what we had to endure, right? There were some things I needed to survive in that space.
And people still do, Matt. So here's my thing, right? It may not be the jungle of Opelika, Florida, right? Where you're scared for your life and all that stuff, right? But even in real life, I'm wondering, what is the intersection, the appropriate, relativity of correlation between mental health and just toughing through it? Like, when does it become soft, right? When does it cross the barrier of, I need to take care of my mental health and my mentals? Several athletes have come out talking about depression and things like that. And when does it get to, you soft, bro, you got to toughen up.
Yeah.
When does it go from mental health to soft?
I think we have to widen that spectrum up a little bit, because I think we're just looking at the two. Either you're soft or you're a typical OG, right? Ain't nothing in between.
But nowadays, that's how we grew up.
That's how we grew up.
Yeah.
But there's always a spectrum. There's always a spectrum that we're unaware of, right? It's called being balanced.
Okay.
Right? Now, if I were to be balanced back then, I wouldn't have fought a lot of people that I fought. One included a good friend of mine who I fought based on principle. Based on me, based on principle. That mentality creates this idea that you have to be this type of individual in order to get validated in your masculinity.
Oof.
Meaning there is no other way to be a man outside of just that image that was presented to us. And I believe that. I bought in. Bro, I don't think I started smiling until I was 26. Like, for real.
What the hell are you talking about?
Like,
what are you talking about? You didn't start.
Think about that. So you get caught. They about to take a picture. You might be smiling if I take a picture and be like,
you right. Listen, I talked about that in my episode about John Moran, which we'll touch on in a bit. If we go back through our childhood growing up, we could probably count on one hand the number of pictures we have from ages 13 through probably 20 something.
That's what I'm saying.
Where we're smiling. So that is a valid point, right?
So what I'm saying is that I have kids, right? And I finally got a boy. Thank you, right? I finally got So when I think about how I'd like my son to be, I want him to be balanced, right? Balanced meaning that he understands that both sides are in him. Meaning there's a side that is calm, there's a side that's alert, but there's also a side that has to be awakened when it needs to be awakened. Now, to understand the two is to understand how your brain functions and what is your heart doing at that time for your benefit or for your detriment. What we've learned how to do is operate in what I learned is called the deregulated state. The deregulated state is when the autonomic nervous system is in control, right? Fight or flight mode, survival mode. Most of us operate in that system as our normal, right? Meaning, it doesn't matter if I'm at Kroger, it doesn't matter if I'm at, you just ready at all times. You just ready at all times because you never know.
Yeah.
You ever been around a person where before they go in a restaurant, they got to case it, they got to look, see who's sketchy, you can't sit with them.
Military or somebody,
right. They got to do reconnaissance work. That's trauma, man. And then let me tell you what happens, right? Your heart is working overtime when you're in fight or flight mode. A couple of things that aren't healthy.
Physical heart.
Yeah, your physical heart, right? It's working overtime when you're in fight or flight mode. But most of us have normalized that level of heart rate. That's why a lot of us have high blood pressure, right? High cholesterol, because our heart's just like killing us. You can't even go to the store without like looking over your shoulder, right? You're in survival mode. And when that happens, of course, adrenaline and cortisol kicks in. Adrenaline is good. Cortisol is good when you're actually playing the sport. When you're on the field, when you're in the trenches doing something, we're being chased by a dog. Yes, you have adrenaline.
You need that to survive,
right?
Survival.
However, when you're at your desk behind a laptop and your heart is racing, right? Just because you read a tweet or saw somebody's post, right? What are you doing to yourself? Or somebody cut you off, and driving, and your heart starts racing because you're angry because that person disrespected you, right? And you gotta. This is comical, man. It's the way my mind used to work.
No, it's true. So, but again, listen. Everywhere now you go, people have emotional support animals, this and that, and they'll say that's for my mental health, my mental well-being.
Right.
I'm not gonna lie to you, man. I look at those people. I'm like, bro, you soft, bro. You cross the line. Like,
honestly,
I feel like there has to be a barrier, a line that says, okay, take care of your mental health, but at what point does everything hurt you? Does it go beyond mental health and it goes into, you got to deal with it, bro. You can't just be that soft. Like, at what point? What is the appropriate level? Because we're trying to be balanced. We're trying to be adults. Like I said, athletes are more coming out now saying they're dealing with pressures and stress. And, you got people online bashing them saying, hey, man, toughen up. You saw, the Kobe Bryant meme, saying soft, whatever. I don't know if you've seen that one. It just feels like the way we grew up, we were like, yo, let's deal with it. We know that's fact. So that's the extreme.
Yes, that's
and now people are like, everybody gets a participation trophy. So it's gone from the extreme of being too hard to now everything being so damn soft.
Right. Erase both of those because both of them comes from an unhealthy perspective. Like either you are soft or you're hard. And that's,
so how do we manage that? How do we manage?
Okay, so
how do we manage remaining balanced?
I'll take you.
And so like my kids, when they do something, I want them to be tough, but I don't want them to be the way I grew up where, I didn't get to be emotional and cry. So how do we balance? How do we manage that balance?
Let's say a person comes to me trying to find that balance, right? A really good therapist would help you understand your own mind first. No two minds are the same, so I can't give you what I give another client. That's one. So I have to understand your mind by understanding your perspectives, some of your stories, some of your internal dialogue as far as trauma past, trauma present, the way you understand your future and so forth. And me understanding that, then I help make it make sense in a way where you have control of all of it. Once you understand that you have control of it, then I start helping you build the coping mechanisms that are the healthiest for you, right? My coping mechanisms are different. So what I need for me to keep a balanced mind, so I won't feel like everyone is disrespecting me. He disrespected me, man. You disrespect me. Where everything is a disrespect, and I have to interact with that aggression in order to be validated.
You got to intervene and stop.
Yeah. So there's a point to where you're gonna learn these skills for yourself to create your own balance. It doesn't have to look like mine or feel like mine. But I think we're not equipped. A lot of us who are in the driver's seat now, as far as giving, those type of antidotes to our kids, we were not equipped with those things. And so therefore we may be mismanaging passing the baton to our kids in certain areas of finding balance, right? I don't want my son to cry. No, man, you can cry. But of course, what are you crying for? What is behind the tears? Are those crocodile tears that you're crying because you can't have more candy? Right? Or were you going, playing in the backyard and you scraped your knee and you're really hurting? Two different kinds of tears, right? Or are you crying because, somebody said something to you and it hurt your feelings, right? Which may be important for them, but for us, we'd be like, man, I used to
toughen up, bro. Toughen up, cuz.
Toughen up, right? Toughen up is one way of saying neglect what you're actually feeling. If you process it, understand it, then you may not have to repeat it. Then you show them that didn't have enough value for you to feel that way. If it had enough value,
you learn to ignore.
You learn, but you have to give time and the ability and space to process what they're feeling, right? If we just be like, forget about it. What they'll do is then they'll stop seeing you as a safe space to express and to understand and to acknowledge their emotions, and they'll start suppressing it. And when in the process of suppressing, what we become is passive. And then we become passive aggressive to where beep, boop, beep, the right combination is push. Then we turn to the Incredible Hulk. They'd be like, dang, where'd that come from? It comes from not being able to manage it. That's where a lot of black men and a lot of these athletes are. They have been scripted so much by what they should be, and we don't even know their full stories. I've had actual NFL clients,
Yeah.
that were in the NFL,
Right.
retired, and brother, let me tell you, their stories are so unique. Some of them are amazing stories. Some of them are like, man, you have to go through that.
Right.
It's crazy. So what you have to understand is that each man's mind is structured by, of course, their genetic. That's 50 to 70% of what their parents gave them, and then the 30 to 50 that's left is by the environment, meaning all of their experiences, the coaches, the teams they played for, the peers they had. All of those things are a combination of how they show up into this world. Not even accounting for the head injuries that some of these dudes. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of factors that we don't know. I think just giving us an opportunity to look behind the curtain to understand where violence comes from, right? Violence isn't bad. I'm going to say that and look into the camera. Both cameras. Violence is not bad. Violence is not bad.
Listen, you got me with that.
Anger is not bad. Anger is not bad.
Because you talked about the fact that, like murder is not bad. So how do you phrase it? Like killing is not bad, or you're capable of killing up? Like how do you?
Yes, I'm capable of killing.
Oh,
Someone's
Jesus.
coming for my kids and my wife.
But you phrase it as like murder is not bad, or like how do you phrase it? Like remember, like we had this conversation.
Yes. So what I was saying was that there are certain actions
Yes.
that we need to take away, certain understanding that we need to take away this bad and good.
Yes,
It's
that's that one.
It's just such a simple way of looking at things that takes you back to elementary school to where if you do this, then you're bad. If you do
Yes.
this, you're good.
Yes,
That's
killing
programming.
bad for the most part, man.
That's programming. That's still programming, right? Mike, you're a good friend of mine. If somebody told me Mike murdered somebody, I'd be like, well, Mike probably had a good reason.
Or
what?
I just killed somebody for no reason.
Mike, what I'm saying is that
It's possible.
It is possible. I'm not. I'm joking, but I'm not. It is possible because, of course, all of us have our boiling points to where it's time to kill. Samuel Jackson, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I did, and I'll kill you. Anyway, right? The point is, it's in all of us. Like I said, that regulated and deregulated state, both of them are inside of us. You could just look at it as the higher self and the lower self. The higher self functions in a way to where we're elevating in all aspects of our life. Our body is healthy. The environment we're in is healthy. It's allowing our brain to thrive. We create more equity for our present and our future, whether it's family, friends, relationship, business. In that healthy, regulated state, when your mind is clear, your heart is not racing, you're feeling good in your body, great things are happening. In that deregulated state, if it's not for the actual purpose of the autonomic system that is inside of you for the survival, right? If my autonomic system is triggered and it's not for survival, then why is it being triggered? Why is it being triggered? If it's being triggered, then that means I'm in survival mode. And for the majority of my day, living in suburban America, I should not be in survival mode. We should not be. So if you hear, oh man, Matt murdered somebody, be like, well, that person probably had a cooking. Because Matt is a balance. I'm not encouraging.
I hear what you're saying.
I'm not encouraging you to hurt people. I'm just saying that we have to take control of our own understanding of what we're capable of. And I'm capable of both. I'm capable of both based on both systems being inside of me. It's the autonomic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. These are both inside of me. There's not one that's more evil than the other. They're both inside of you. It's balance. But most of us can't have balance based on how we were programmed, based on how we were raised, based on the environments we grew up in. We have normalized a lot of the unhealthy as our own norm. So our heart is always waiting for that other shoe to drop to then be about that life.
Yeah, no, that's
We're waiting for that opportunity to prove that this is the life that I've lived.
Yeah. To
Why?
prove our toughness.
Why? Right? My masculinity is not on
To
trial.
prove I'm not soft.
Yeah,
you
my
be having a good time. You want to prove that you ain't soft. You're waiting for somebody to try.
Right. Right.
Right.
My masculinity is not on trial, and so I don't have to keep showing up in every circumstance.
You're waiting to tell your boss off at your job.
Waiting for somebody to look at you the wrong way.
Oh man, you're right. You're right. Damn. Okay, so we have to get over that hurdle, that hump of looking at things that you're either hard or you soft.
Right.
Essentially, what you're preaching is there has to be a balance.
Yes.
And mental health is really a balance. It's not saying put away toughness.
Right.
It's just that storing it somewhere so that you can function normally on a regular day, and when it's needed for fight or flight mode,
Right.
then it can come up.
Let's go MCU for a second. MCU, Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
One of my favorite characters is the Hulk. And not from the MCU, from the comic books,
Yeah.
from the
Okay.
for the Avengers,
Yeah.
cartoon series. Hulk is incredibly intelligent, right? One episode specifically, his genetic makeup seeped into something that all of the Avengers was using, and everybody turned into a Hulk. Every single one of them. So they had Iron Man Hulk, they had Black Widow Hulk. All of them were Hulks, right? And they were just crushing. They were just like, as soon as they touched something, it would break. Right? Because they didn't understand how to control that Hulk inside of them, right? Hulk says something, I think, on the movie that I think is representative of the character in general. When he turned around, when he's about to fight the aliens, punch the alien ship, he said, "I'm always angry," right? Meaning anger is a part of him. He's accepted that to be a part of him, but he's learned how to manage it in a healthy way. I don't run away from my anger. I embrace my anger because it is a part of me. It's an acknowledgement of certain things that needs to change. And without that acknowledgement, nothing moves. So when I get angry, I don't have to communicate my anger in a dysfunctional way. My anger is just the indicator of something that needs to shift in the environment. Without those triggers or emotional awareness, sometimes we're not even reading what the signs are telling us. The sign is telling, yo, something got to give. And if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to eventually snap. So either create a boundary or change the relationship, or cut that thing out your life if it keeps bringing you back to that space, right? And so that's what I've learned how to do. I've learned how to breathe, meditate, go in nature, drink more water, right? Sleep more, right? Turn off the programming that triggered my fight or flight response. And then when I am able to watch I watch movies, man, I watch shows, but I watch it in a state to where I'm not using it to then minimize what my emotional and mental experiences are. It's not my medicine. It's strictly entertainment, right? It's not feeding me something that I'm missing to plug a hole in me, right? It's just a part of what I use, like going out and watching the trees or watching birds, I watch squirrels chase each other. That's funny, right?
That's sports to you now.
That's funny. It's funny. It's hilarious, right? It's hilarious, man. And so I've learned how to do these things, and I help my clients learn how to do these things that make sense for them, to where they're not showing up in their lives causing more disruption because they don't understand where they are mentally and emotionally. Just know where you are, and when you know where you are, then you can either taper it up or taper it down based on the right occasion.
So as you're talking, and we gotta move on, but here's the thing. Do you think I just thought of this? Do you think being an athlete plays in this at all? Because as an athlete, you're always in this, I gotta be the best. I gotta beat you. Always in this competitive mode, right? So when you step on the court, whether it's once a week, twice a week, whatever it is, your heart is racing because you're trying to prove that you belong, that you're the best. You gotta beat the man across from you, right? So do you think sports actually can be a negative in that sense? Because dudes are always like amped up. So professional athletes.
Whose sports is that? Who's programming these athletes to believe that? Who's at the top of the food chain of these programmings?
Oh, come on, man. Even those who aren't in the pros have that feeling,
okay,
bro.
man, listen, I played in the hood. I played ball in the hood.
Exactly.
Right? And then at the end of the game, we're still good.
Right. But during the game, you were hyped up, and sometimes we take it away, like especially for somebody you don't know, and that person beat you, you take it away until the next time you play them again, so you can beat them. So I feel like is that
There's nothing wrong with that. I think what we have learned about some of these behind the curtains, like when you get a chance to understand some of the mentalities that they're teaching their players, some of them aren't healthy. I don't know if you saw that documentary with Doc Rivers when he was in the Celtics. When he was with the Celtics, he has this documentary. I don't know if it's on Netflix where they talk about, but he introduced this word to the team, Ubuntu. Ubuntu is an African proverb that means together.
I've heard that word.
Right?
Yeah. Don't know what it means.
Ubuntu means together, and they embodied that understanding, which allowed them to be champions, right? they're together. That's a collective understanding that's different from, yo, man, you got to be an adult. That's still a part of it too, but I think we have to learn how to create that balance internally with every individual player. In fact, the person who I learned, the neuroscientist that taught me about regulation and deregulation, his name is Dr. Bruce Perry. Definitely check this guy out. What he talked about was a lot of the athletes that come from the inner city, wink, wink, black athletes, right? He said that a lot of them may be very talented, but they may not have the necessary skills to regulate their mental and emotional states. And we've seen a lot of those players from our era, Maurice Claret, Marcus Vick, a lot of these talented athletes, they just may not have had the, know-it-all to be able to say, I need to chill out. I'm about to lose my scholarship. I'm about to lose my pathway towards my career. Or I can just keep it real, right? And so you have to find that balance, man. And I think there is a balance, even with the Bulls. The Bulls used to, with talking about, what's the guy's name, man?
Dennis Rodman?
No, the coach.
Oh, Phil Jackson?
Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson used to have his boys meditate.
Yeah, he did.
Right?
He tried.
Balance internally. Yeah. Right? And so you have to think about what is internal in the mind and the heart and the soul and the body. What is causing a person to show up at their best? What allows us to show up at our best is being at a regulated state. Steph Curry, who's one of the greatest players right now, he has learned now how to regulate his heart rate in game. Did you know that? He can regulate his heart, meaning most athletes
doesn't stop running and
no, he doesn't have to stop running through his breathing, through his own understanding, through his breathing.
That's next level, man.
Yes, he can regulate his heart rate so that everybody may be functioning at an alert or an alarm, and he's still in a state where he's more calm than anybody else.
Dang.
Which gives you more access to your muscle memory, your long and short-term memory, your cognitive thinking. A lot of the things that help you become your best is in the state of regulating your own mental and emotional states. That's balance. But when I need that edge, when the situation calls for it, it's naturally inside of you. I don't have to drum it up. It's naturally inside of you.
Yes, but it's naturally say it again. It's naturally inside of you because of the environment you grew up in?
No.
Or can our kids who are suburbanites now, right? They didn't grow up in the jungle, right, of South Florida. They didn't grow up in poverty, right? Is that inside of them still?
Yes.
So, or I don't want to say, do we have to cultivate it? You don't want to cultivate that kind of personality, but like, are we preparing our kids? And I do want to talk about that in a later conversation when we come back. But preparing our kids to survive in this world where we want them to be emotionally evolved, right? And mental health and all that. But the world ain't like that, bro. So that's a conversation for later time.
I got you. So let me just stop on that. Which world are you preparing your kids for? That's the question that you have to ask yourself.
Bro, I'm preparing my kids for the damn jungle that's outside that they have to face every day.
If that's your vantage point, then that's what you prepare your kids
for. But don't you believe that? And again, I don't want to get into this right now, but don't you believe that being all nice and together and all this stuff?
Nice.
Like, I know, but when you go out into the world, the workplace doesn't care about you. Your employer doesn't give a damn. Your manager doesn't. Of course, it's unhealthy.
Right.
But if you're gonna survive, you gotta be able to put up with somebody telling you something you don't like, and not cowering away and this and that, and responding to where you can still perform at your best, even though your environment is not the greatest. Because stepping out into the world is not like it is with family. Okay. Right? It's different. It's different. So that's what I wanted to say. But I want to leave that for another conversation because we don't run out of time. Go ahead.
Here's what we have to do collectively, right? Elevate our consciousness to where we're forecasting better for our kids.
Damn, we gotta have to next time. We have to break that one down.
We gotta go there.
We have to break that one down. Let's keep going, y'all, because we've gone long already. So, real quick, I know you wanted to talk about this, and I want to talk about this. Was John Morant and his acting a fool, playing with guns,
right?
And I've kind of combined that with Travis Rudolph's situation, where for those who don't know, read up on the Travis Rudolph situation where he got into his girlfriend. She called the homies over to come shoot him up. He ends up responding back and shooting, killing somebody, goes to trial. He sits in jail for like a year or something, goes to trial. He ends up being not guilty because of Florida Stand Your Ground law. That was the real quick and dirty version of it. Read up on it. But I combined those two in one conversation around gun culture and African Americans, African American males, specifically black males, and that there's two extremes, and I've mentioned this before, it seems like. There's the extreme of, you gotta be hard. We talked about this, right? You gotta be hard, or you gotta act like you're hard.
Right.
You gotta have either experienced gun violence, you gotta act like you've experienced, or actually been part of gun violence. Neither of those are good for your mental health. But black people deal with that all the time. They're either from that stuff and they have to deal with the trauma like you did, or they act like they've lived that stuff and they gotta act hard on Instagram, holding gats, and acting like they're ready to fight anybody, even though they've never bust a grape in their life. Like, that's kind of like the black male life that a lot of us have to live, and the trauma that we have to deal with. So I want to get your expert opinion real quick on how do we survive that, overcome that, whether it's real, we've experienced it, or we're trying to act like we've experienced it. What message would you give to those two groups of folks to become just better humans and just live life outside of, the trauma or the wannabe trauma that they've experienced?
Yeah, I think the first part is that there's a generation of men and women that needs to heal. Like we have not had safe spaces over the decades to talk about the level of trauma we experience. One of the stories that I remember vividly was Stoneman Douglas. I was living in Coral Springs when it happened, and Coral Springs is like one city over. It's like 10 minutes away from Stoneman Douglas, right? And I remember the response of the kids at Miami Northwestern, which is a high school that's in the inner city of Miami. They were saying, like, you guys tripping over one mass shooting where we have shootouts every other week around our neighborhood and our communities.
Right.
And this getting this national attention, but there's no one paying attention to what's happening in our communities. Right. And so what we've learned how to do is make the matters of a specific population more traumatic and make the matters of another population more resilient. And that word we use as a badge of honor, resilience, right? Resilience talks about bouncing back from traumatic experiences. Why do we have to keep bouncing back from traumatic experiences? Why is it that there are so many traumatic experiences in our lives and so few in other people's lives, right? The reason there is more is that our communities aren't healing. We're not healing. And so when you're not healing, we rinse and repeat. I don't think we're not allowed to heal. I think there's a lot of information that's out there. It's making that information available in ways that are more agreeable with our community.
When I say not allowed to heal, I mean, I feel like there are external forces that come in and just do things that cause those wounds to be reopened again so that they never heal. Like the next generation just keeps coming in and they just keep adding on, like lack of education, access to jobs, like all of these things I feel like create the environment where that trauma can keep taking place. So
it could.
That's what I say when I say not allowed to. So let's talk about
insert that image. This image right here that you're going to share with your audience but from another neuroscientist that I met. Ironically, man, I met this guy in West Palm Beach at a conference called In the Age of Violence, right? And this conference was about the violence of West Palm Beach, right? And the majority of the audience was white.
Yeah.
Right? West Palm Beach. No, but the violence wasn't happening in their communities. They were talking about the violence that's happening.
Right.
Okay, so.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Right, so I'm on stage, brother. I'm on stage, probably like the second and third speaker. And I'm one of maybe two black speakers. I think there was another black young lady who spoke. She talked about bullying. Shout out to her, right? But in my presentation, I was talking about the silent violence, meaning the violence of microaggression, the violence of racism, the violence of marginalized groups of individuals that are consequence based on their reaction to the violence that's perpetuating in their lives, right? Meaning, bro, we wake up to violence, go to sleep to violence, and then when we're violent, they ask the question, why are you so violent? Of course, after being pushed into a corner, after being poked, probed, and all these traumatic experiences that are happening to us, then eventually what you'll find is that you will have a negative response. You have a more aggressive or violent response. The gentleman who came and spoke after me, Dr. Jeremy Reiner, who has since passed away, we can talk about that at a later time as well. He was one of the fathers for the girl, one of the daughters, one of the kids who got murdered at Sandy Hook.
Ooh.
So in his career, what he did was he pivoted and took all of his resources and started studying violent brains. And in the process of studying violent brains, this is the paradigm that he came up with, right? A paradigm of violence and compassion. On both sides, what you clearly see is that there is a difference between what produces violence and aggression versus what produces compassion, compassion and kindness and so forth, right? When you look at the one side, you have ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. Adverse childhood experiences. And what ACEs is traumatic experiences that we've had from 0 to 18. And I would go up to 25 because your brain is still developing. And these traumatic experiences, the more you have them, the higher correlation that you have to negative health outcomes in your 40s, 50s, and 60s. That's one. The second one says what? Environmental stress. Growing up in the hood, there's a lot of there's sound, there's sound, there's smell, right? Then it says substance abuse, right? Then it says access to firearm. Then it says toxins, poor nutrition, physical trauma, violent media, inflammation, and infection. All of these things which were common in our communities. This is just one community. This is the other side of the train track, right? Family, social peers, self-mastery of emotional intelligence, right? Mindfulness, good nutrition, which your wife talked about, exercise, educational media, self or professional help. A lot of these things that we think are what being soft is about is actually the balance that we need to create the right protective environment for our brains to thrive in. When my brain is healthy, I'm less violent. When my brain is healthy, but when my brain is not healthy, based on having all of these unhealthy experiences, then of course I'll be more aggressive. When I hear young people who commit, like a mentor, a friend of mine in Miami, he was mentoring a young man that was convicted of murder. And I was asking him, man, that's so tragic. Tell me about his upbringing. Man, his father wasn't there. His mom was just such and such. I'm like, wow, that's not surprising. Tell me more. It's like, he was, da-da-da. Basically, he was describing the side which had all the risk factors. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense that he would end up killing someone based on his experiences. Meaning, when you understand the violent brain, then you stop villainizing the individual. These individuals, they're not bad people. They just had a bad deck of cards where no one took the time to actually process and help them understand what was happening in their minds to then learn how to let go of some of these things to build the right coping mechanisms to create more compassion, kindness, connectivity, and eventually resilience.
Yeah, so that's true. And then as you were talking, I was thinking back to our earlier conversation, though. So about being soft, right? It's like, I feel like it's like one big circle of soft and mental health and things like that. So how do you help someone like a John Moran? Because there are kids out there, man, who are either experiencing, like I said, gun violence or violence and trauma every day. They grew up in the hood, Opalaka, the streets, right? Liberty City. That's all they know. And then there are those who now have to act like they're from the hood, from Liberty City, Opalaka, right? Like North Miami. Like they have to act like that.
Right.
How do you help those two individuals reach their best selves? Like what would you tell a John Moran?
Yeah, you know what?
Stop fronting?
No.
Stop acting like that. That ain't you, cuz.
I would have to.
You ain't like that.
You saw, right?
Bro, you really saw.
No. Honestly, I would have to understand where he's coming from. And in order to do that, I have to have more context. Meaning, when I have a chance to sit with a client, I help them see their lives from a different vantage point, to where they can get to see their perspective, see their life from an outside perspective. Mm-hmm. There's something called a genogram that I take them through, which outlines the relationship between their parents and the kids from their generation, and then if they had kids, we can even go back to their grandparents. What it does is it shows a history of relationships, whether healthy or unhealthy, instead of good or bad, whether healthy or unhealthy, meaning what was the benefit of grandfather to dad, right? Which is John Moran's dad. How was John Moran's grandfather to his father. What was that relationship like? Wow. And then what was the relationship between John Morant and his father, right? And his mother. What was the relationship between? And let me stop.
I hear what you're saying because on the outside looking in, a lot of us will be like, bro, you grew up in a great environment, suburban type of deal.
You don't know all of that.
Both parents, you know what I'm saying? That's what it seems like.
Right.
So from our vantage point, we're like, yo, you have no reason to be flashing guns on the gram, fam. Like you ain't about that life, so stop acting like it. That would be our direct response to him. Just like, hey man, stop capping.
If you want to,
you would say no. Let's look back at this.
Yeah, if you want to intervene in a healthy way, the first thing that we have to do is try to understand. And I think our understanding is limited based on what we think we have access to. People don't know me, or people see me and they think they know me because they saw a couple pictures on Instagram. They don't know me. Even as an artist, I put out there what I put out there, but you still don't know me. Right?
Sure.
And so if you have the opportunity to create a healthy environment for a person to be completely transparent and vulnerable, you get to learn certain things about them that you may not understand, you know? That may be a way of, of deterring, people who would try it otherwise, right? Meaning,
you think somebody's gonna look at John and say, yo, I ain't gonna try you just because you did some stuff on the ground?
Yes, because he has. Honestly, man, like I said, we don't have the full context, but you have to understand the state of perspective. Once you pull that curtain back, we're gonna see things that I promise you, I can't even repeat some of the things that I've heard that has happened to some of these athletes that allow them to show up into this world the way they do. We don't know the full story, and so with a person like Ja, of course, I would have to sit down with him and fully understand that story, and then help him understand which direction or which trajectory he would like to go in versus the trajectory that he can go in if he continues that. Listen, man, where I'm from, if you flash a gun, you better be ready to use it.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
It's not a Gucci bag. It's a Louis purse.
Right. Like, and you flash it if you're using it.
You got to use it. So yeah. So understanding what you're inviting to you. Some of them may not understand it because they're not from that. If you understand it, you won't be doing that. Most people that I know who actually would use a gun in a heartbeat, you're not gonna know they have a gun most of the time. You're not gonna know until it happens.
Exactly.
Right? And I think there is an understanding that this generation may not have because of how it's celebrated, not just on media, but in music and art. So we're imitating an imitation, basically, without even knowing that's what we're doing. We're imitating and imitating. But our generation have done it too.
Yeah.
Some of the hardest guys that I used to listen to, Cube and
Tupac,
Cube, Ice Cube, one of my favorite MCs, Drake, Dr. Dre from what? These dudes were intelligent brothers, right? Intelligent individuals that understood that if they put that out there continuously, it's going to come back to them. So eventually what happens is that they switch the content and understood that, listen, this is entertainment. I'm not in this situation anymore. But Drake said one of the most, I'm talking about life-changing things I've ever heard. He said, I could never see a black face or a brown face looking back at me and see that person as my enemy. I was like, dang, that's cool. From one of the OGs of the West Coast. Right? And so we can't believe
Cats was supposedly doing some stuff.
We can't, it's not to say that he didn't. What he's saying that in his new consciousness or how he grew from where he was, and we all have to grow, all of us should be growing, is that maybe that's how he was versus how he is, or, at that specific time, what he was relating to us. We all got to grow. And I think John Morant may have some mango seasons to grow up, man. He might have some time to just...
And for the guy, so John is the imposter.
Right.
We got to wrap up. But for the guy who has experienced that stuff,
right,
who has the actual legit street trauma,
yeah, how
do you help that guy get over and reach that better self that you hype that you're talking about?
Yeah, that's a whole therapy modality, man. We have to go through a couple of sessions to be able to get to that space of true vulnerability, man. And I have clients, it takes them the first session. Some of them come out and they pour it all out, man. Like, yo, man, this happened. And I'm like, whoa, this is just session one, bro. Relax, let's go down. But they've never had that space to where they can let out some of these toxic, traumatic experiences that they've held on to because there isn't the space to where they can show the emotions and actually process the thoughts that they've had, and actually the physical impact that it has had on their lives. And so once they come to me, they have that safe space where we can go through a journey of processing, understanding, creating closure through reconciliation, and then building the right coping mechanisms so that if they are triggered, the response is different from what they would naturally do based on the dysfunctional brain versus the healthy brain.
So essentially, if you find yourself in that space,
Come out of that magic.
See my man Matt.
I got you.
Get some help, for sure. One of the smartest guys in this space that I know.
Appreciate that.
Bro, I appreciate it, man. As always, and whenever we talk about this stuff, I learn a lot. We've come a long way from, the guy I used to boss all the time in Tallahassee. I ain't gonna front. I've had some career days against Matt catching touchdowns, man.
I'm gonna let you keep that because the last person I corrected. Let me stop. We had a good time, man. It was a good round.
Those were good times, man. I was like, back in Florida State days, and that was the time. So, man, appreciate you, Matt, once again, man.
Oh, I actually have a song that kind of summarized a lot of.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, how can people reach you? Your message is true and it's pure, and you spread it not just in mental health but in your music as well. So, how can people holler at you and reach you for more?
All platforms, Matt Genius, MattJeanius. MattJeanius. All platforms, Instagram, Facebook, also on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Matt Genius. And I have a single called Love Gun where I kind of summarize some of the traumatic experiences that I've had and why it was difficult for me to actually become a gun owner based on those traumatic experiences that I've had. And all my music are kind of dealing with the mental and emotional in some way, form, or fashion. Not as direct because I still think it's an entertainment form. So I do entertain, but I also put messages in all of the songs that I have. I have a song that's recently came out called Make a Meal /Meal. And it's talking about cooking for the family, right? Men in the kitchen whipping it up, like cooking. But I also, in the field, which is the metaphor for being outside, making sure you get it done to bring home that bacon for the family as well.
Matt Genius.
Yes, sir.
Wherever social media platform you're on. Again, bro, I appreciate it. We're going to do it again. Lots more to talk about just based off of this. I'm sure other things will come up. Hopefully, like I said, you'll be a recurring guest once a month.
We can do that.
Every 6, whatever it is.
Send in questions.
For sure. Leave your comments, questions, whatever your thoughts are on this episode. We'll appreciate it, and we'll get it to Matt and try to get a response the next time. So thanks again, y'all, for watching, listening. Mike Filmer here, Matt Genius. Sports with Rest. Appreciate y'all.
I'm going straight to the top. Just put the sec on the clock. I am Rihanna's a shot. I'm going straight to the top.